I've seen it work not just for me, but I've literally seen it work for a lot of people. So it's like a miracle that I feel very few people know about. So molecular hydrogen has been thoroughly studied. It's actually medically approved already, but only in Japan. It's not medically approved in America yet. And so there's numerous studies, and we're not talking like 10 studies or 20. I mean, if my recollection is correct, I believe there's over 2,000 studies at this point. I saw a study where hydrogen actually helps also bring down the parasitic count within the body. So parasites. So this is another one. I don't think it actually kills the parasites, though I think that it creates an environment that the parasites don't like.
Hello and welcome. I'm Sarah, and today I have the pleasure of Greg, the hydrogen man. So his name gives it away a bit, but he is an expert on the uses of hydrogen for medical conditions, and he's been in this rabbit hole for a very long time. He's studied pretty much all of the research, and he works with medical doctors helping people improve their health. So Greg's going to walk us through the best way to make the cleanest water possible, because this is one of the fundamentals. And then he's going to talk in depth about how hydrogen works, hydrogen inhalation, what you shouldn't do, why other hydrogen machines or bottles or Brown's gas can be problematic or even harmful. So I'll hand you over to Greg now. Welcome to the channel, Greg. Do you want to introduce yourself and let people know why you're an expert in the field and what you're going to talk about today?
Well, people online know me as the hydrogen man, and I have expertise in water, but hydrogen is obviously something that I know a whole lot about. And I noticed that in America, people really don't know a lot about it. And some people really know about hydrogen, but knowing the way to apply it and make it is what I realize is extremely important. And I haven't seen almost anybody really understand that other than the Japanese. They really seem to understand the difference between therapeutic grade hydrogen. And I also know a lot about health. Mostly it's a strange story because I never thought that I'd go down that road, but I ended up getting extremely ill and no doctor could help me. I did work in the medical field, which is a little ironic for 2 decades or so. And I ended up having to find my own way, and I carved my own path. But I've discovered that what I've done for myself actually works for others. I always want to say I don't give any medical advice. I never, make any medical claims. All I can tell you is that I definitely found my way out, and I've applied my techniques to other people, including people in my own family. And the things that I've seen are, dare I say, literally like miracles. It's actually hard to believe, and I don't personally think it's that complicated these days, where health, everybody seems to have their own difference of opinion on health, and I just think it's really not that complicated. But so my real expertise, is really hydrogen, water, and health also comes into the mix.
Oh, that's brilliant, because that's right up my street. Maybe if you want to just elaborate a bit on what it was that you were ill with, and then maybe walk people through water and hydrogen from the beginning so that they can be up to speed.
So I had multiple issues. So I did have tumors in my body. I had like an autoimmune thing going on, crazy inflammation to the point where I literally couldn't even grab a remote control and change the channels on the television. That's how much pain I was in. I couldn't walk. So that was another major problem. And the pain that I was in was so high that even when they gave me the most craziest of medicines like morphine, oxy, these type of things, it didn't even make a dent. I mean, I still was in excruciating pain, so it didn't work. And it gave me a lot of side effects, made me sick. I don't handle pharmaceuticals very well. I also had a heart condition. The heart condition was not anything that I actually thought I'd be able to get rid of originally, so I wasn't that worried about it, even though I was told by the cardiologist that it was going to end my life. And it said it would do it in less than 10 years, and that I needed open heart surgery, stuff like that. And yeah, my liver wasn't at its best. My kidneys were not at their best, but they weren't like super, super terrible. So they just weren't really at their best. And so that's kind of a lot of the things that I had going on, unfortunately, with my health. And my immune system was absolutely horrible. My gut was not doing super great either. So there was just a lot of different issues. And I don't think anybody knew the source of all these problems. I was just having all these problems. And so, yeah, it caused a lot of heartache, unfortunately, in my life. And then, of course, we were talking about hydrogen, which is basically a gas. So think of it like oxygen. And we are talking about a specific type of hydrogen. And I don't want people to get confused because there's so much terrible information out there. Unfortunately, I've had to get mine from actual like professional scientific data rather than listening, unfortunately, to too many people. and their opinions. But we are talking about molecular hydrogen, not things like Brown's gas. I'm not talking about things like deuterium, type of hydrogen, those type of things. The reason I speak basically about molecular hydrogen is because that's where the scientific data is at. So molecular hydrogen has been thoroughly studied. It's actually medically approved already, but only in Japan. It's not medically approved in America yet. And so there's numerous studies, and we're not talking like 10 studies or 20. I mean, if my recollection is correct, I believe there's over 2,000 studies at this point. So there's a lot of research about what this stuff really can do and what it really is. And I've seen it. I've seen it work, not just for me, but I've literally seen it work for a lot of people. So it's like a miracle that I feel very few people know about.
Okay, do you want to sort of walk people into the role of hydrogen in the body? Maybe, well, you touched on what you mentioned, Brown's gas, and I've heard of that as well, and deuterium, again, I've heard of, but maybe just say to people what this is not going to be about, and why the hydrogen is important in our bodies.
Yeah, I think the biggest issue that I see out there is that people try to say, like the Brown's gas one, they actually try to piggyback on all the molecular hydrogen research and then say, oh, look, we have something that's better, even though it's not proven. That's why and that's not the only reason I'm cautious about it. They actually use chemicals, not everybody, but if they ever use anything like lye or sodium hydroxide, which is the main ingredient in Drano, terrible, terrible thing, in my opinion, to use. And I've literally received emails from people who have been harmed by it. So it concerns me. I don't like when people are getting harmed when the real goal is to try to help people get better. I mean, that's the real reason I'm doing this, is because this is maybe off topic, but when I was really sick and I was literally on the couch and I was telling you that I couldn't use a remote control, and I broke down. I just started crying, and I thought, Jesus, is this where my life's going to end like this? And, sometimes when we're at our lowest points, we make a prayer. And I prayed, at that moment, I was like, you know what, God, if you can lead me to what's going to help me and help me find my way in regards to health, because it wasn't really my forte. I wasn't interested. I have to be interested in something to really learn about it. And I just wasn't interested in health that much, to be honest. And I made that prayer and I said, look, if you lead me down the right path and help me find my way, I promise that I will share it with others so that they can find their way. And then I ended up finding my way. And so that's why I'm doing all this all the time, sharing this information with people, because I know what it's like to suffer. And I really don't want people to suffer. I want people to be able to get their lives back the way that I've been able to get mine back, so that, so you can have your life. And I think it's very sad when people lose their ability to whether it is to walk, or they're in a lot of pain, or their brain doesn't work right, or certain organs, the whole thing is very sad. And so I hope that this will help. Even if it just helps one person out there, it's worth it. But I really encourage people to share this information, because it's like a miracle, and a lot of people really don't know the correct way to go about it.
I think a lot of that will resonate with a lot of people about being desperate and trying anything, because also, just before we go into the hydrogen gas, there are hydrogen tablets that people can buy, which are readily available, and then there's also you can use electrical methods to split water. You can buy machines and things which make something which people claim to be hydrogen water. Do you maybe just want to tell people what we're not going to be talking about, so we can then move towards using hydrogen properly?
Yeah, so the first thing that I will tell you, and maybe I'm disclosing too much, you tell me, but I have been attacked legally by a lot of these companies because they don't like me sharing the knowledge that I've discovered. So I'll tell you, like, for example, with the pills, all I'll say with the pills, the hydrogen pills, is not knowing what's in them now, I would never use them. And there's numerous reasons, for that. There's not just like one. And I can tell you a little bit about molecular hydrogen. For example, it's odorless, colorless, tasteless, and pH neutral. Molecular hydrogen. When you drop these pills in water, they change to a gray color. They taste like metal. They have a really terrible smell, and it changes the pH to go very acidic. So it doesn't really fit in the criteria, but a lot of people promote it. And I'm sure you can guess why. I mean, the reason that a lot of people do the things they do, I do understand that it's, in my opinion, financial gain. And I understand that. But when you talk to a true professional, there is so the true professional doctors, you rarely see them online. You rarely see them do any type of podcast. I found when it's such professionals, he's actually in Japan. He is a practicing physician. He's actually at the top of his field. He's a neurosurgeon. So, I mean, that really lets you know, what he's really involved with. And he himself is like, I would never suggest the pills for my patients. You know, in fact, he's like, he laughs about the Brown's gas stuff. Here you literally have doctors here, though they're not really true doctors that understand hydrogen. A lot of them are naturopaths and they haven't really studied the subject. They're trusting what they're being told, which is the dangerous part, in my opinion. But in Japan, this guy will only use specific equipment for both himself and for his patients. And it's actually he's only recommending one machine at this time. And me personally, I've only found about 3 machines out of all the products out there, only 3 that in my opinion are up to my standard. But there's only one that's up to Dr. Adachi's standard from Japan, and it's the one that I use. It's a Japanese machine. Most of them are actually made in China. It'd probably surprise you. Some claim to be made in other areas of the world, but if you actually look at the components they're using, this is where it gets real sneaky and all the legality of it all. They're actually using parts from China, and then they put them together in some other place, you know, whether it's Canada, the US, or wherever, even Taiwan, Korea, and they try to claim that they're not Chinese. Everybody knows that we really don't want stuff from China, but I would say almost every single hydrogen product is actually coming from China from everything that I've been researching. So it's very important to learn how to use it. Yes, we know hydrogen's amazing. Same thing goes for like ozone or oxygen. So I think this is important. Oxygen's a gas. So if you go to a hospital, it is obviously medically approved. They use oxygen, but it's not normal oxygen. It's medical grade oxygen. And that's different than the type of oxygen tanks they have like in a place where they do welding, for example. And the big difference between medical grade and non-medical grade is the purity. You have to have the purity. It's like eating food that's sprayed with pesticides. It no longer has that purity. And it's very important for it to be extremely clean if you're going to, in my opinion, use it for your health. Because like I said, I've literally cautioned people, not to use certain hydrogen products. I mean, I could show you one example actually, but I'm not going to name any names of brands, for other reasons. But like these little portable bottles, I'm not a fan of these for many reasons. You'd have to do your research, but basically, for example, if they use plated metal, I would never use plated metal now. From what I've learned, I would never use stainless steel. I would never use chemicals, and I don't even like it when it directly electrolyzes the water, which is what this does, because it creates impurities. So it's all about the purity. And that is basically the fundamental difference between making a certain hydrogen gas that has a certain level of purity versus cheap equipment that potentially either leach metals or create impurities or use chemicals. So it's important. And I hope people begin to understand that, because I do not like seeing people who are actually being harmed by such things. And I have seen, unfortunately, that happen.
Oh, definitely. Do you want to walk people into how hydrogen helps the body, and then move into the correct usage of hydrogen, and maybe also touch on why water's so important? Even though we are 99 molecules of water per 1 of human, I think it's very easy to miss what's right in front of our noses.
Absolutely. So hydrogen is tricky. I say it's tricky because let's say they do a study, and there's numerous studies on whether it's arthritis. It was approved, for example, for heart attacks, whether it's a stroke, whether you have dementia, TBI, Alzheimer's, blood pressure issues, cholesterol issues, diabetes. I mean, the list is so long. And originally, when they were doing these studies in Japan, I don't even know if you know exactly where they really originated from as far as why they started doing this. It's a brief story, but I think it's important. It literally comes from Mother Nature. So have you ever heard of a place called Lourdes, France?
Yes.
Or Lourdes, France? So those are the healing waters of Lourdes, or like holy water. And for a lot of skeptics, and I am a skeptic, I have to see data, I have to see the science. I just don't listen to too many people's opinions, unfortunately. But it's just I'll be open-minded, but I have to see something that makes sense. And the waters of Lourdes were supposedly helping a lot of people overcome certain medical issues. And that's how it first began. A lot of people probably thought it was placebo or something. Eventually, there were well-documented cases. And so eventually scientists were sent to study the water. Nobody could figure out what it was. It was H2O. It was the Japanese that discovered that, and it's very hard to detect molecular hydrogen. Eventually they detected it and realized that water is rich in molecular hydrogen. And that's where they started doing studies first on mice. And as they did the studies, they could see improvement. Like, for example, again, whether it's arthritis, just for example, and they could see the markers and see that there was improvement. The biggest issue is they didn't know how it was working. Now, more has been discovered since then, but we still don't know the full-on mechanism of hydrogen, but we can see that it works, which to me is the important part. I mean, understanding the mechanism, that's great. To me, learning how to make it, learning how to use it so that it's effective is what matters, at least in my opinion, because that's what I wanted. I just wanted to get better. That's all I wanted to do. And so what they know about hydrogen is that it appears to function as an anti-inflammatory. It appears to function as a very unique selective antioxidant. So it's not a normal antioxidant. If you look at a chart of antioxidants, one of the things that I learned that I was pretty surprised about is that they come in different sizes. So CoQ10 could be a large molecule, vitamin E could be a little smaller, maybe vitamin C, glutathione. All of these have different sizes, but when you compare them to hydrogen, hydrogen is like so tiny. Almost, I mean, you literally can't see it. The interesting thing about it, though, is being so tiny, when it enters the human body, it goes past the blood-brain barrier. It can get into any place in your entire body. There is no place that it cannot reach. That's what makes it so magical. I mean, even if you put it in a jar, like a glass jar, the hydrogen will go right through glass. It's unbelievable how much it can penetrate. And I think that's part of the magic of what it's doing. But it also does more stuff. Like I have some videos. I have a YouTube channel where I share all this information for free. I don't charge for anything. And I share this information where I show, for example, like live blood analysis. There was a lab in Japan, they did live blood analysis and showing what hydrogen was doing to the blood. It was a funny video because I had a doctor that actually saw the video. And I remember when she called me, she said, you know, what you're showing there is impossible. She said, that's just not possible. She thought I was lying to the people. And I told her, I said, look, I got this footage from Japan. It was done in a lab over there, specifically with the equipment too that I use. So that was kind of nice because it's like apples to apples. You're seeing the equipment that you like to use do what it does to the blood. Make a long story short, she said, you know what? I don't believe it, and I'm going to prove it wrong. And if I prove it wrong, are you willing to share my data? And I said, absolutely. This is all about the truth. She thought I was being tricked by Japan, but a lot of people don't understand the Japanese culture. I really doubted that they were trying to trick me, but I said, okay. She got the same exact piece of equipment. She did the exact same lab tests. She actually did them in Canada in her own lab, and the results came back exactly the same. And so when she contacted me back, she said, I can't believe it. It's real. This stuff is so amazing. It literally does what we might even call the impossible. And hydrogen, in my opinion, also kind of defies gravity. I actually call it the ascension molecule. I think there's a very spiritual component to it. I mean, hence, it came from Lourdes, France, you know, this holy site. And I think that there's something very special about hydrogen. And I've been connecting the dots in regards to it. But what it does for our body is just so amazing. It's like our bodies were designed almost for it. And the way that it moves the blood, the way that it seems to help bring the body back into balance. The results that I've seen, again, like one of the more recent ones was I've seen people with macular degeneration. I mean, that's a condition that is not supposed to go away of the eyes. I just recently had my eyes checked just the other day, actually, because I have a lot of issues in my eyes that run in my family. You know, my father got glaucoma at a young age. I have other family members that have had macular degeneration, just lots of issues in regards to such things. And even like dementia and Alzheimer's, you know, running in the family. So these are things that were of concern to me. And I've been getting my eyes checked regularly. And I just got them checked. And the doctor's basically telling me, he's like, this is crazy because based on where you're at and what I'm seeing, it's like your eyes are getting younger. And it's just crazy. So they were pretty impressed when I went over there just the other day to do those tests. And even my father, who had glaucoma for about 30 years or more, his glaucoma went away too. I mean, they were trying to test for it all of a sudden. He goes in every year. And 1 year, all of a sudden, they're like, your glaucoma just disappeared. They're like, oh, this is not possible. They didn't believe their own results. It was hilarious because he's been going to the same eye doctor for 3 decades or more. And so when he was showing, you know, that he wasn't testing positive for glaucoma, they just thought that was really odd. So they repeated the test. I believe they repeated it like 4 times. They had him come back like a few months later and, you know, or a few weeks. And then it was like a month. And anyway, they kept bringing him back and they couldn't believe it. They ended up sending him to some other expert because they're like, we know you have glaucoma. Nobody's glaucoma disappears. He might be the first person ever documented, especially at his age, for his glaucoma to go away. So the stuff is unbelievable. I love it. And I know, I really believe, but I know it's going to change the world. Hydrogen is an absolute miracle, not just for health either. There's other ways to use it. And I think it's going to transform a lot of industries. And we're just starting to realize what this stuff can really do.
That's great what you've said, because I think people are stuck in the paradigm of having an incurable disease or condition because the medical industry says so, because they're not willing to look out of the box because it's competition for the pharmaceutical industry. Just for the watchers and listeners, when it comes to molecular hydrogen and say a proton, you sort of say a H plus, how would you distinguish, or how would you explain to people exactly what we're talking about, and how, what form is it in the body, the form you're talking about?
Well, let's keep it real simple. So molecular hydrogen is H2,
Mhm.
right? And some people will say, well, okay, water is H2O.
Mhm.
So people will say, well, if I'm drinking water, aren't I getting hydrogen? You have to understand that hydrogen in water is bonded to oxygen. So when you have water, think about this. This is interesting. Both of these are actually gases, oxygen and hydrogen. They're both gases, but when they come together, H2O is water, right? So it's a liquid at this point. Obviously, water can be frozen and it can turn into steam, but in the end, they're bonded together, which means that it's not really bioavailable to you. You can't really be inhaling water. If you need to inhale oxygen, you have to inhale oxygen. Hydrogen's the same way. You're just getting that H2. So in water, if you were to break it down for people the way that I make it, you're talking about H2O plus H2 plus H2 plus H2. What you're actually doing is dissolving the gas in water, again, the way that it is in Lourdes, France. And you're actually using water as a carrier. That's basically what you're doing. It's carrying this gas a lot like, you know what? It's a lot like carbonated water. Carbonated water, CO2. So you've dissolved that gas into the water. With hydrogen, you dissolve the gas into the water. And the water changes a little bit. It's actually really beautiful because I've known a lot of elderly people. I have one relative, for example, that says she was concerned. She wanted to use the hydrogen because she was having medical issues, but she was concerned that she wasn't able to drink enough water. She's like, I just can't drink water. She said, I drink a tiny little bit, maybe throughout the entire day. And she said, I cannot put down enough water. And I've seen this a million times actually. So this is why it's interesting. Hydrogen seems to make the water like, it's not just more permeable, more hydrating, and helping in so many other ways that I could go into. But the point is that when you drink it, it just feels smoother. And this particular relative, when she started drinking the water, she's like, I don't know what it is about this water. It goes down so smooth. She said, I can actually drink it, where normal water feels a little thicker to her. So I found that so interesting. And I've seen this pattern a lot for a lot of people who said they're not big water drinkers or they just can't do it. I've seen it repeatedly where they can drink hydrogen water. So I find that very odd and interesting. I have a lot of experience now because I've been making these observations for years. I've been making my videos for years, and I've been trying so hard to bring this information actually out to the public because there's so many people out there, in my opinion, suffering and they don't have any answers. And it's so frustrating. People spend large amounts of money going to doctors or naturopaths or buying stuff. I had somebody recently contact me who had spent, boy, it was like $160,000 in different treatments and doctors and products. And they were like, you know what? The hydrogen worked better than all that stuff. And they said, I wish I would have found that a long time ago and saved myself the money. And I actually went to the same path. I spent all my savings and I ended up losing basically everything. I lost my home and it was really difficult when you have medical issues and no money. And it was just a heartbreaker. I mean, I was crushed. And that's why I think it's important. I want people to know about this. And I think it's actually one of the simplest ways to improve your health, whether you're sick or not, even as a preventative. I believe it's extremely important. That and clean water, to me, is foundational. Clean water and hydrogen is absolutely foundational, regardless of how you choose to eat or what supplements you're taking or nutrients. All that stuff's important, but you have to have that really clean water. And then, in my opinion, the magical substance that is known as molecular hydrogen.
So, in your view, what would you say is clean water? Because I still know people that drink tap water. And like you said, I think I just want to interject. I've been fiddling around a lot making different waters, and it tastes absolutely delicious when you make a good batch. But in terms of clean water, what's your definition of it? Because it's obviously a really important beginning or baseline for people to then move into the hydrogen as well.
So, this is actually a really great question because when I was first sick and I was trying to do my research, and even when I was trying to learn about water, everybody and their mother had a different opinion. People are like, no, alkaline water is the best. No, this spring water is the best. No, this why everybody had a difference of opinion, which was very confusing for someone like me who was trying to find the answers. I'm like, well, which one is it? And I'm a very independent thinker and I'm a critical thinker. So I thought to myself, what is the best water? Well, in my opinion, wouldn't it be water that has no contaminants? I mean, I just want clean water. What does it take to get clean water? And so I even have a lab report here because I was able to read, this is a third party lab test, and I'll show you some interesting stuff in here. I learned every water filtration modality in existence. I know all the different types of water filters and how they work, just like hydrogen, how they work and what is good, what isn't good. Again, in my opinion is solely based on the contaminants in the water. I don't really look at like, oh, this one has this many minerals or this many minerals or this is the pH. I don't let that confuse the topic. I just want clean water. And what shocked me as I started looking at every water filtration modality is that no water filter could filter out everything. You're always going to be left with some pharmaceuticals. You're always going to be left with some contaminants in the water, whether it's fluoride, whether it's glyphosate, whether it's some really crazy stuff like PFAS, which is horrendously bad for your body. And you should see how many people's water it's in America. It's almost in everybody's water, by the way. And you should see the science behind that. It's horrible. I would never want that stuff in my body. And so I was trying to find ways to get everything out, and then I found it. And again, it was nature. See, this is where I'm so fascinated by the way nature does things. Nature actually cleans water, and it can clean everything out of it. And how does it do it? It literally starts with hydrogen, of all things. Hydrogen, filtration with hydrogen. How is this happening? It's the sun. The sun is made of hydrogen and also helium. Just so people know, helium is a form of hydrogen. So the sun hits the ocean, it gets hot, and the steam or the water basically begins to ascend. Through the ascension process, it leaves all impurities behind. That's when I started looking into this. I call it carbon distillation. It's a combination of distillation and carbon. Are all equipment created equal? In my opinion, no. I've seen a lot of different equipment. And every time I'm not trying to throw China under the bus, but when I see Chinese products that I've tried and they just don't work as good, or they don't filter quite as good. I've even seen water filters. I'm not going to name the name of any companies because I don't want to be doing that right now. But all I'll say is that I've seen water filters that literally they test the tap water first, test it after it goes through this filter from China. The water ends up worse. The water literally has contaminants in it that were not in there before. So these filters, there's even a lawsuit against a company that will remain nameless. But I've learned so much, and dare I say, and I'm sure you know this, I just feel like almost everybody's bought and paid for. That's what I'm finding out. It's all about money. It's not about making like the best product. And periodically you'll find some company out there that really truly wants to make a good product. And the one that I found is an American company, and they're actually made in America with higher grades of, for example, metals, and the way that they route the water for greater purity. This is the company that did the lab test, the third-party lab test. And this is what I personally use. And if people want to know, it's a website called mypurewater.com. If they want a discount, they're welcome to use the code uprising144K. They don't want to, it's fine. I'm not doing it for that, just for discounts. But if you were to see the contaminants in our water, this is crazy. So every single one of these words is a contaminant, every single one. And it shows the levels before and after the carbon distillation process. And there's pages and pages of chemicals. And what surprised me, even more chemicals, what surprised me was actually what's in the water. I knew that there was going to be, pesticides. I knew that there was going to be things like fluoride, arsenic, heavy metals. I knew this type of stuff would be in there. What shocked me is the stuff that's in there that I did not know about. And it's darn right scary. I'll show you one of the things. And there's, more pages. There's so many of them, of a lot of stuff. Radioactive contaminants in our water. That's crazy. Why in the world do we have radioactive contaminants in our water? This is a huge problem, and you can't filter this stuff out with normal filtration. You just can't, in my opinion, and based on stuff that I've seen. But that's what my definition is of pure water. And this is another important thing. Have you ever heard of a neti pot? This is a good example. You ever heard of a neti pot?
Yes, the thing you use to wash the inside of your nose. That's
right. Have you ever read the owner's manual of those things completely?
No.
Okay. So I'm gonna give out a warning to people right now. people will literally take filtered water from the refrigerator or even tap water or other filtered water that they have to run it through their sinuses with a neti pot. There have literally been people who have died doing this because we're talking about going right through your sinuses and it can go to your brain. The neti instructions specifically say to only use the water that I'm literally using and recommending, which is the distilled water or the carbon distilled water. Why? Because it removes all impurities. You cannot have any impurities running through a place like your sinuses. I have protocols for the eyes, again, for like glaucoma and macular degeneration. Those protocols, I would only use carbon distilled water. See, this is how important clean water is because it could literally kill you. And no water filter will filter out to that level. Why? Here's another interesting aspect to it. One, they don't filter out all viruses, all bacteria, and all parasites, but carbon distillation does. It removes all parasites, all viruses, all bacteria. This is so important because I kind of believe, this is off subject, but I almost feel like they're putting stuff in our water. And that's scary to me. And the quality of our water is not very good. I've seen lab tests from all over the place. It's scary what's in our water. Not even to talk about microplastics. I mean, microplastics are a huge issue right now. And they're in our water and they're getting in people's bodies. I believe the last numbers were that people are consuming roughly 1 credit card of plastic a week. I mean, that's pretty insane. And most of it comes from your water. So, like I said, this is my definition of clean water. I hope that answers your question.
Oh yes, it does.
What
was the name of the company again? I mean, we can always, I'll put it in the notes under the video, as well as your channel and where to find you.
So the website is called mypurewater.com. And I give you the discount code if people want a discount. And they have multiple machines, not a ton of them. I think they have like 4 different ones. They all make the same quality of water. The only difference is because they have a price ranging. Some are like a countertop, which is what I have. I pour a gallon in there, it cleans that 1 gallon of water. Then they have really big systems that are more expensive, but the quality is the same of all of them, which means the good news is that we can actually clean our water and it's not that expensive. I think their cheapest system's like 600 and something bucks. And with the discount code I give, it lowers it to 500 and something dollars. And to me, for 500 and something dollars for a machine that will most likely last you the rest of your life, they're high quality machines. They're not a Chinese machine that will break in a year or two. And these ones, I mean, I have some, they literally last forever. I've just used them forever. They never break. And, you know, to have something like that that's in the 500 and something dollar range for clean water, oh my gosh, to me, it's priceless. Clean water is priceless to me. That's my opinion. But thank God it's not.
I was going to say, for the everyday listener, I mean, we all have different budgets. I think it's always important to find something that's affordable, because even if somebody was on a low budget, like you say, you can always not spend the money on more lab tests and more supplements. If there's something that's going to move the needle massively and change your life, it's worth knowing about. And like you say, it's all very simple as well. So how does carbon distillation differ from, I know that there's a company in the UK that sells distillers. What's the benefit of this particular method? I want to thank my sponsor, Lightwater Scientific, who helped me deliver free valuable information to you and also allow me to have great guests on this channel. Lightwater Scientific produce the purest and most deuterium depleted water in the world. Depleting or lowering your deuterium has numerous health benefits, from better metabolic health, more energy, greater resilience, less brain fog, increased physical performance, enhanced healing, and healthier mitochondria. Deuterium is an isotope of hydrogen, also known as heavy water, because it's bigger and heavier than regular hydrogen. Even though deuterium makes up only 0.02% of hydrogen, it's found everywhere. Deuterium is a burden to your body because it interferes with the intricate chemical reactions that occur by slowing them down. Deuterium is kryptonite to your mitochondria, and we need healthy mitochondria to produce energy. There's over 60 years of scientific research on the negative effects of too much deuterium on health, and also the positive benefits of lowering deuterium in the body. Lightwater deuterium depleted water is 100% safe and non-toxic. In fact, it's the closest in structure to the metabolic water that your mitochondria produce. Lightwater deuterium depleted water comes in 5 or 10 parts per million glass or plastic bottles. So level up your health by leveling down your deuterium today. The purchase link is in the show notes, and use code Dr. Sara for a discount off your order.
So the biggest thing is carbon distillation is basically the combination of the distillation process. There's a few things that get past the distillation process. And the reason is, I probably shouldn't tell you these details, they're probably boring, but when it's being distilled in nature, the water rises. I mean, it'll rise way into the sky or to the heavens really high. In a distiller, it can't do that. It can only go so high in the distiller. And so it'll get almost everything, but it leaves a few little things. And then they use carbon. The thing about the carbon is there's different qualities of how they create the carbon filters. And that's why I like this company, because I don't trust, I hate to say this, I don't personally trust the ones that are coming from China. Okay. And sometimes they even claim to be American, like I said, but they're really not. And because of the lab tests that I've seen, it makes me weary. I'm very careful about the products I choose for my health. And I don't even choose that many. I only use like 4 products. I don't need 20, 50, 100 supplements. And I've had blood work to prove that what I'm doing is working. And I've literally had doctors call me, which was pretty shocking. They literally called, and I remember one time a female doctor called me and she was like, you know what? I've never seen blood like yours ever. And she said, I've been doing this for decades. And I was like, I thought there was something wrong. I'm like, what do you mean? And she said, your blood's unbelievable. It's so healthy. She said, I actually want to know what you're doing because I want to apply it to my patients. Wow, that doesn't happen with an MD very often. I'll tell you that much. And so that's something that I've learned, throughout this process, how important water is. And I also learned how important it is for kids. So people don't understand this. Apparently, and this is, of course, I learned this through reading the data, children, their bodies are basically not fully developed yet, especially infants. So people who just put, some tap water or some, inexpensive filtered water, nothing fancy, to make a baby's formula or something, babies are at much higher risk. In my opinion, you absolutely need to have the cleanest water. But the difference between the equipment also is the way that the steam is routed. So this is what I love about this company. The companies that I choose, I tend to find that these companies are obsessive. They're passionate about what they do, and I love that. They just want to make it better and better and better. And they figured out if they route the steam in specific ways, the water comes out cleaner. And this is why they do the lab tests. And then the carbon on top of it all. But you could also, if you have a good carbon filter, I do this a lot too. I actually have an RO filter. I have every water filtration method there is. I have RO, I have gravity filters, I got nano carbon gravity filters, I got distillers, the whole thing. And I take the RO water and I put that in my distiller. And once I do that, I actually don't even need to use the carbon because the few things that I needed it to remove, it does remove those. Then I run it to the distiller because it keeps it clean. To this day, I still haven't cleaned it because it stays so clean. And that's the only caveat. You have to clean it once in a while for people, depending on how dirty your water is. I had somebody recently contact me and they said, hey, I got that carbon distiller you recommended and I've been using it for months, but man, the tank is filthy. It's so gross. I mean, what the heck's going on here? And I said, what you don't realize is that that's what it's taking out of your water. Your tank's gross, but hey, it ain't entered your body. It entered this tank and you can clean it out. That's what you're supposed to do. And they were like, oh, okay. They totally changed their mind and they're like, this is great. But their water is absolutely filthy.
Exactly. I think to backtrack, you were saying that the details might be boring. I don't think they are because so many people go around telling us, oh, you need to buy X, Y, and Z because it's better, but they don't tell you why. And I'm the same as you. I have to go down the rabbit hole and all rabbit holes coming out. So I think it's really important that you explained exactly with a logical scientific reason why this is better, because sometimes people will just dismiss really valuable information like yours going, oh, it's just another sales pitch. But I think you highlighted this at the beginning, that we're so bombarded with snake oil that we accidentally I do it sometimes, poo something that could be life-changing because we're just drowned in pseudoscience. So shall we move into the next level? So if people know how to go about making some clean water, what's the next stage of how to use the hydrogen properly?
So the beautiful thing about the way that the gentleman who designed the hydrogen generator, his story is so great. I won't go into great detail. I'll just say that his own daughter was sick. They said that she would not make it to the age of 5. And he knew about hydrogen and he just got so passionate and he wanted to help his daughter and he wanted to create the best hydrogen machine in the world that you could use at home and that would be accessible to the average person. That's how this all began. And he actually asked, so really wasn't doing it for the money because I even found out that he said that he's like, look, I could have had it made in China, but I didn't want to do that because I wanted the best. And I know what China does. And so he said, he made it in Japan, in-house. It cost a ton of money. but he wanted to do it the right way. He asked industries to help him. So this is a big deal. He asked Yamaha, he asked Toyota, he asked G-Shock. We're talking billion-dollar industries in the technology that they have to help him. And no money was involved as far as him, like these industries, they're not going to make really any money off of this. It was more of a pursuit of passion, which is why I love it, that he did it the right way instead of cutting corners like I've seen so much in the world of hydrogen. So he gets the help, he creates this machine. What I like about the machine is that you do not hook it up to your water source. I love this because there's so many machines that you have to hook up to your water line, and then it runs through whatever filters some company is offering, and you don't know where they're being made. The truth is, I'm not really a fan of those type of filters anyway, because they're typically just carbon filters, which means that they're a porous filter. And porous filters, the results that they'll give you on a water test when the filter is new, so like the first 50 gallons, is going to be 1, whereas later, after 3, 4, 500 gallons have gone through that filter, it builds bacteria, and then the water can even get worse, contaminated. That's why I'm not a huge fan of those type of filters. I'll always run it through my carbon distiller. So anyway, this machine, you can put any kind of water you want in it. So for some crazy reason, you're like, you know what? I'm a big believer in my artesian well water. I used to be a fan of well water until I saw the lab results, but I'm just saying some people are really, they believe in a certain type of water, and that's fine. You can take any type of water you want and put it in this hydrogen generator. That's what I kind of like about the machine. It doesn't hook up to your water line. It gives you the freedom to choose what water you want. Once you put the water in there, the machine is specifically designed. This is where kind of everybody goes wrong with hydrogen. A lot of them, again, directly electrolyze water, like I was showing you with one of these little bottles. I mean, most machines directly electrolyze their water, and it creates impurities. This particular machine, the gentleman built 2 chambers on purpose. One chamber is utilized to extract the hydrogen out of the water. The other chamber is specifically designed where it'll dissolve the hydrogen. It releases it and dissolves it in a very unique way into whatever water you choose. Once you drink that water, the water is a carrier for this hydrogen gas to enter your body and basically do the magic that it does. I mean, it truly is magical. If people saw that, I have my videos numbered. So one of the videos is video number 8. It's really good. It shows the cells being bombarded by chemotherapy when they don't have hydrogen and when they do have hydrogen. And the difference is like so dramatic, you don't have to be a professional to realize the difference. I've seen lab tests where, again, live blood analysis, it shows what the blood is doing, and they give the person normal spring water and see what the blood does. And then they give them the hydrogen water from this specific, the generator is called the Lourdes HydroFix Premium. The official website, if people want to just see it or read about the science, is holyhydrogen.com. And so they show the way that the blood begins to move and the way that it reacts to the hydrogen is so unbelievable. And then I even have footage from another medical center in Japan that works with patients with dementia and Alzheimer's. It's so unbelievable what this stuff is doing to the brain. I mean, it's truly remarkable. And one of the ways that they're able to measure is through thermoimaging. And so they used thermoimaging before hydrogen and after, and you clearly see the differences, and they're measuring temperatures. It's so magical because one of the things that people don't realize about health, I'll give you one example of what the Japanese discovered. They discovered that almost every single cancer patient, the numbers are, I believe, like 97, 98%, it's huge. It's almost everybody. All of their core body temperature actually goes down. So there's a correlation between core body temperature and health. And I could give you other examples. For example, have you ever noticed when a little kid, like they're just a little toddler, they're running around in a diaper and it's like actually cold and they're just fine? Have you ever seen this before?
Oh yeah, all the time.
And you touch a baby and they're warm, okay? You go to an elderly person and they're super cold and they're trying to wear all these clothes, especially cancer patients, they're very cold. There's a correlation between core body temperature and health. This is why things like saunas are really good for you on top of everything. And there's good science to support that too. So the reason that I'm bringing this up is because when you use the hydrogen, what's been proven, it's actually a fact, it helps increase core body temperature. And so this is very, very important in the way that it moves your blood. We need proper blood circulation. Obviously, that's why they give people statins and things of this nature to try to get your blood, the viscosity of it. When you exercise, you get the blood moving. But hydrogen does this as far as you can see in the video. That one's video 68, I believe. And I can't remember the number of the video of the thermoimaging from the medical center. But the stuff is just in my opinion, it's an absolute miracle. I mean, I've truly fallen in love with it. and what it does for the body and what I've seen it do for others. I just feel, I've been looking for joy and happiness for a long time since I was little. And to me, one of the greatest joys is when you have the ability to help others. When you see somebody get better, and by the way, that company, they do have their own official YouTube channel. People should go there. The YouTube channel is, I think it's called Holy Hydrogen is the name of their channel. The reason that it's so amazing is because I've worked with people, and I'm thinking of one story right now of a woman who had TBI, which is traumatic brain injury. This poor woman could barely finish a sentence, and she'd forget everything after 10 or 20 or 30 seconds. And it was really bad. And she contacted me, and I did everything I could to help her. And I spent a lot of time with her because, dare I say, it was a little frustrating when someone can't remember what you just explained to them. She eventually was able to use the hydrogen, and she called me many, 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 many months later. And I didn't even recognize her because she called me and she was forming complete sentences, totally coherent. And all she wanted to do was call me and thank me for saving her life. And I was like, who are you? I mean, how did I save your life? I didn't really know what she was talking about. What I did not know is that apparently she was planning on taking her own life, if you can believe this. She was going to take her own life. I mean, this is so sad. And she prayed, kind of like I prayed when I was at my bottom. She prayed for some type of answer or direction or a sign. And she said that I popped up on YouTube and she started watching me. And that's why she reached out to me. And now she's alive. And she did an interview with the company. The company interviewed her because she gave her testimonial and she spoke about me, a little bit, of course. But that's the kind of stuff that fills my heart with joy, that fills my soul with joy. And it's just, to me, it's priceless. I just think that health and helping other people, I just think it's the most priceless thing we can do that will bring us more joy than just about anything I can think of.
Oh no, I completely agree with you that it brings me joy to help other people, but also I'm often met with resistance when I'm trying to share information or help people. So that I find that it doesn't put me off, but I just get disappointed or angry inside because I'm being obstructed. And like yourself, why would you say that not everybody knows about this, and who do you find obstructs you and stops this information from being got out? Or is it more that there are so many other hydrogen products available, people are just that confused, they'll just buy those and think, oh, I've ticked the hydrogen box now, I can move on? Why is this special information that we're getting?
Well, the big thing that I've noticed, unfortunately, is that, okay, so there's these companies, I'm not going to name any of them, but they offer a lot of money to people. I was offered. I've turned down so much money. And some people, I mean, maybe I'm a fool for doing it. I accept that, but I just couldn't do it. I couldn't promote, a product or show a product that I just knew was no good. And I would try them. Some of the companies were like, well, I'll send it to you. And I was trying to be open-minded, like the Browns gas stuff. They sent it to me. I tried it. It was horrible. I mean, it was horrible. And the more I would look at the machine, I'm like, something's not right with this machine. Eventually, I was actually got in contact with a scientist. He's a specialist in hydrogen also. And he was promoted or approached, I'm sorry, by the same company because they wanted him to promote the same exact machine. And he looked at it too. And he's like, this thing is not the right way to make hydrogen. And it's not even the right hydrogen. He's like, Brown's gas is not what the data or the research is about. There really is virtually no data actually on Brown's gas. It's a little bit of a fringe science at this point. And so him and I have conversed about this, and I've talked to other people. The problem, in my opinion, is money. You get offered a lot of money from these companies that have cheaper devices so that they can make the profit and they can have enough money basically to give a lot of money to influencers. And that's been the pattern that I've seen. Unfortunately, the most popular products, in my opinion, I'll just say in my opinion, are actually some of the worst ones. And that's a little ironic in the world of hydrogen. And there's just so much, dare I say, I hate this word because it's flying around everywhere, but misinformation. They're literally misinforming. I mean, you'll see, I hate to pick on Brown's gas, but all I can tell you is that you'll see somebody talking about all the hydrogen research and you're thinking, oh, this stuff sounds amazing, which it is. And then they say, hey, we got a product here that is amazing. It's Brown's gas. I'm like, but that's not what the research was based on. What are you doing? But most people don't realize that. They truly think the Brown's gas is the same stuff and it's not. And so, and then nobody seems to ask the questions. And so many doctors have been fooled too. It's amazing. The purity aspect is so important. I cannot, I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but the purity means everything. And you got to have medical grade gases. Dr. Adachi from Japan literally said that it's very dangerous because you're using a gas that goes past the blood-brain barrier. You do not want impurities in it. This is the fundamental problem. The device from Holy Hydrogen, which is really fascinating, the metal that they use. So I've been having to unfortunately learn a lot about the science of metals, which is again not something I wanted to learn about, but I had to in order to understand this subject. The metals that they're using, the science of metals is so complex. And China doesn't really have this level of technology. They just don't have it. There's only 3 countries in the world that have it, and only 1 country that's actually done anything with it. And that's the US, Germany, and Japan. And the only people who have really taken it to the level for equipment like hydrogen is Japan. I mean, it's only 1 company. There's literally 1 company in the world that can make this metal to this level, to this grade. And it's a Japanese company. And that's exactly what they put into HydroFix. But the metal is still not enough. Then there's a membrane. And I just recently saw lab tests. It's a little concerning. I'm not going to name again names of companies, but the membranes that they're using in these products, I saw the lab test. They show PFAS, and that's exactly the stuff that I don't want in my water. This stuff is nasty, nasty stuff for the body. The Japanese, their membrane, I just recently saw, they actually developed a new one, tests negative. There is no PFAS in it, but the membrane is so well designed. It's like revolutionary. And again, nobody in the industry uses these parts because they're too expensive. And I think that's the fundamental problem. I think it just comes down to money. I think that's why people are not learning about it. I've known numerous physicians who were interested. This is a funny story for you. I've met physicians and I've met people who actually know a lot of these companies. And it turns out a lot of the people who run these companies actually will use the right equipment for themselves. So it turns out they'll literally get one of those machines from holyhydrogen.com, that website. They'll use that for themselves, but they'll sell something else because they want the real hydrogen, but they also want to make profit. And I've seen that too. It's so hilarious that I ended up finding out about that. Multiple people. It's not just one person who's doing this. And so I think it's marketing. I think it's the money. And I think it's a lot of misinformation. But in the end, I just think people are offered a lot of money and, they end up going for that. And they're convinced that they're being shown the best when it's super clear that they're not. It's so easy to know right from wrong if you know what to look for. Just look at the metal. If you're using stainless steel, it's not the right type of metal to make medical grade, really good hydrogen. And they primarily use stainless steel in the really cheap stuff, like the Brown's gas machines. Anything that uses chemicals, whether it's sodium hydroxide, potassium hydroxide, lye, I would not use anything like that. And the hydrogen pills, obviously, I think I explained all that already, why I wouldn't use that. But it's difficult to know what to look for. It really is difficult. But if you just want the answer, it's one of the reasons I made my videos, because I'm like, I did all the research. I could just show somebody. That's what I wanted. I did exactly what I wanted. I'm a big proponent of treating others how you want to be treated. And I thought, man, I just need to make the channel. I wish my channel would have existed when I was doing my research. It would have saved me so much time.
Oh yeah, exactly. And also you're a great canary to work on, because if it was all wrong, because of your past medical history, things would just flare up within sort of 2 weeks or less if something was wrong. The other thing that listeners may ask is, why aren't these available in hospitals? Because I am aware that there's sort of definitely 2,000 or probably even more now research papers. So why isn't it available in hospital, even sort of where people would have to pay, or say a hospice or something like that? What's the barrier there?
So they actually are available in Japan, for example, but in America, it's not something that's been approved. So it's not being used in America. Though I have seen people, the gentleman who made that device, he made it so well to the point where, again, you have a hydrogen specialist who's also a neurosurgeon in Japan. He literally recommends that device. And my understanding is, I mean, he has no financial incentive and he already does quite well. But when he talks to his patients, he's like, this is the equipment that I recommend that you get, and you can use it at home. I remember a woman, this is a crazy story. Her husband had multiple strokes, and that's one of the things that it's actually available for. And if you want to know the science of it, I find it fascinating. I don't want to bore nobody, but I find fascinating what hydrogen does for people with a stroke. But basically, this woman, her husband had a stroke. He went to the hospital and he was just out. He was in a coma. He wasn't waking up. And she contacted me and she wanted to take the hydrogen to the hospital. This is what made me think of it because of what you mentioned. And she literally took the machine because it's the size of a coffee maker. A hydrogen machine doesn't need to be big. It's all about the metal, the membrane, and then this particular one that we like, or that I like, everything that is being used is food grade as far as to be able to extract the hydrogen, no weird chemicals or anything. And so she took it to the hospital and she put them on it because the device does two things that are really awesome. One, yes, it makes the hydrogen water, and there's different qualities of hydrogen water. In my opinion, this is the best in the world. I don't think anybody's making better hydrogen water than this device. But it also has the gas, an extremely high purity of this gas. She put the gas on him and he was just laying there in a coma. And I'm trying to remember how many days it was because she had lost all hope. He had been there a while. I think it took, if I remember correctly, I wish I could remember the number, but it was something like a week, maybe 6 days, something like that. And all of a sudden, he woke up and she was just like, oh my God, they thought he was going to be just in a coma forever. And I'm going to share a little bit of the science on the whole stroke thing because I think it showcases what hydrogen actually truly is. Basically, let's say you have a stroke and you have cut off blood supply to a part of your brain. Okay. If you don't get blood supply to a part of your brain for 5 minutes or more, I'm sure you know what begins to happen. It begins to die, right? And this is why people who have strokes, a lot of times half of their bodies won't work. Their faces are drooping and they can't walk. And so what hydrogen appears to do is, of course, it goes past the blood-brain barrier, goes to the brain, especially when you're inhaling it through a gas. And it goes to that part of the brain. And even with no blood, it appears to keep that area alive. Now, think about that for one moment, because this is a miracle. There's a weird scriptural verse. I don't know if you've ever heard it. And the verse goes like this. It says, life is in the blood. You've ever heard that verse? And so if you have blood, there is life. If I cut blood supply off to my hand will eventually go numb and it'll eventually die, right? Hydrogen is going to these areas and keeping it alive with no blood. I mean, that's unbelievable. I mean, to me, it's actually a darn right miracle. I literally think that hydrogen is the life molecule. There's a reason that it brings life to the blood, to the organs, to the body, to the brain if it's not getting any blood supply. That gives people time. So in a lot of ambulances in Japan, they'll have the hydrogen gas because if somebody has a stroke, they put them on it. Or if they have a heart attack, they put them on it. And that way, when they get to the hospital and they're able to restore the blood supply, that area of the brain, people literally like 99% or more of the people make a full recovery because you've kept that organ alive until you're able to restore blood again, the blood supply. I just think it's it's just so awesome.
Oh no, I'm listening with great interest because to me an electron is my favorite thing on the planet at the moment. But then again, was going to ask you with a hydrogen delivering life, how does it actually do it? Because obviously you've been down this rabbit hole a lot, and because we're kind of really near to the end of the podcast, it doesn't matter how technical you want to get, because I think it's still important to not dumb things down, because otherwise if you dumb things down too much, it becomes not believable. Whereas if you explain at sort of a quantum or molecular level how hydrogen provides energy, I think it would be something of great interest to people. And it doesn't matter how deep you want to go.
Well, you mentioned something interesting. I do want to mention this. You said, like I was talking about being the life molecule. In my opinion, what we're actually doing here, again, I said that the sun is basically made of almost entirely hydrogen.
Yeah.
And that means all the stars in the heavens, all the stars in the cosmos, and outer space is made of almost entirely hydrogen too, by the way. So hydrogen's like super amazing, right? But it's not just light, it's light. I mean, the sun is light. It's the light of our world. And so I actually think that that's something that we're taking in. We're taking life, but we're taking in light into our body. That's what I really think we're doing with the hydrogen. Now, as far as some of the stuff that it does, like, okay, here's a real simple way to explain it too.
Oh, actually, I think that's maybe before you go in, that would make sense, because again, hydrogen has an emission spectra, and I think it's something people forget and ignore, that it's like a provider of red light. I think that's the correct emission. So we've basically got a little molecule of hydrogen that's a little light source. So that would again make sense to people who understand our way of thinking. So sorry, I interrupted. So if you carry on, so the hydrogen's like a miniature sun inside us. If I just want to simplify things for people.
Yeah, and it helps keep things clean too, because I'll give you another interesting example. This I want to tell you who it is, but she probably wouldn't want me to. But I'll just tell you that there's somebody that I know who used to get infections all the time. She probably would be embarrassed because they were UTIs, right? She's getting urinary tract infections on the regular for years and years. It's like a normal thing for her, and it happens, a few times a year or whatever. When she started using the hydrogen, she doesn't get those anymore. And I've seen a lot where it helps reduce the risk of infection, which is really important. We can easily, people get bacterial infections, viral infections, things of this nature. And it reducing the probability of that, just that is also something that is also amazing. And then again, with the anti-inflammatory aspects that it appears to have, that's also something, that's obviously greatly important. But the simple way to explain it, so this is actually the way the Japanese chose to explain it at first, because I wish I could show the visual, but I remember looking at this one scientific report where they showed all the medical conditions, like heart disease, high cholesterol, inflammation, like, let's say arthritis. And they had all these medical conditions, tons of them. It was a massive list of all the conditions. And then next to each condition, they showed the pharmaceutical medicines that were prescribed for that particular condition. So they would have pharmaceutical medicines over next to each condition. And then next to those, they would have more pharmaceutical medicines that would either counteract negative side effects or just because you needed more than one medicine for this condition. And you ended up with a list that goes off the page. It was massive, the amount of pills or the amount of medicine that you'd have to take for these conditions. The reason that they made this chart was because then they showed hydrogen. And they said that they had observed that hydrogen worked on all those conditions. And they said, how is it possible that one thing like hydrogen can do all this when you need a massive list of all these medicines from the pharmaceutical industry? I mean, what's going on here? What exactly is hydrogen doing? And this is what they discovered. They just got all these millions of dollars later, and we're about to get the answer here for free. Woo! Basically, it came down to forms of free radicals, free radical damage, things like oxidative stress, ROS, reactive oxygen species. What you begin to realize is that there are these almost like forms of oxygen. Now, I know everybody thinks oxygen's great, and I'm not saying that oxygen's not great, but I hope that people understand this. Oxygen is oxidizing. Hydrogen is anti-oxidizing. And oxidation can be good in some ways, but it can also be bad, because if you oxidize metal, it'll turn to rust, then it'll turn to dust. It's actually almost like the death molecule. Why would a death molecule be important for our health? Well, oxidizing or killing things, well, oxygen can help keep things relatively clean, right? Maybe oxygen can kill some bacteria. That's why we use things like hydrogen peroxide if we get a cut. Ironically, hydrogen peroxide is not the hydrogen we're talking about, because it really has more to do with oxygen. Hydrogen peroxide is H2O2. It's an additional oxygen molecule. This is why it oxidizes. This is why it burns. If you get food grade hydrogen peroxide, it's like 40%, it will burn you. Oxygen burns. So it's good at killing things, but you got to be careful with oxygen. Hydrogen is actually the opposite. Recently, there was somebody who was a burn victim who used hydrogen. I could not believe the results from using hydrogen for somebody who had been burned. But to get back to your question, to explain it simply for people, and the Japanese trying to understand this huge list of medical conditions, is that they all had a correlation with free radical damage. So if you have too many free radicals, if you have too much oxidative stress, which in my opinion is very common these days, it's not good for us, and the inflammation and the different things that it appears to do. Well, hydrogen has an affinity by nature to bind to oxygen, and then it creates water. So it appears that the hydrogen goes in, is actually attracted to this type of oxygen, and this, again, these like reactive oxygen species, ROS or whatever, and it binds to it. It appears to neutralize it, and then turns to water. So that's one of the things I've noticed about using the hydrogen equipment at the beginning, especially, is that it makes you pee a lot, because it's turning these things, in my opinion, into water, and it's flushing the stuff out of your body. The inflammation comes down. Everything begins to actually come into balance in the body. That's why I think they call hydrogen a selective antioxidant, because it doesn't just go and start indiscriminately antioxidizing everything. It's selective in how it does it, and there's no place that it cannot reach. So there's a lot of data in regards of, like, it can penetrate the mitochondria. It can go to the deepest places where things can't get to. And on top of it all, one of the other big discoveries in Japan is that it appears to open up ghost vessels. Have you heard about this?
No.
It's so fascinating
I,
because,
I was
oh, go
just
ahead.
going to backtrack again about making water in
Yeah.
the body, because again, that's sort of the mitochondria make water for us, and the better they can do that, the healthier we are. So if we can use hydrogen to clear up oxygen radicals and get free water out, we've got an additional part to our water battery, so turning something bad into something good. And I think, like you said, nature has an answer for everything, and hydrogen is natural. And then you mentioned sort of it can get right into mitochondria, and then I just wanted to backtrack. So yes, definitely carry on.
And I guess this is just because I just want to touch on one thing real quick. Like, a lot of people catch flights to go to that place in Lourdes, France, or Lourdes, France, right? Hoping that they can drink the water for a day or two, and that's awesome. But when you have your own equipment, ironically, the equipment is it's the same name, Lourdes, but they call it the HydroFix Premium.
Mhm.
But it's almost like you have a natural spring in your home of this water. You don't have to catch a flight. You can have it in your home. You can drink it every single day, and it is the price of like an airplane ticket, but it is going to last longer than 1 or 2 days. The machine's actually extremely reliable. I have learned that hydrogen equipment is actually very unreliable from everything that I've been learning, and of course, trying multiple equipment. And the Japanese made, like, in my opinion, the Toyota of devices, extremely well built, reliable, and it actually ends up being, I think, the cheapest in the long term because it lasts so long. You can make hydrogen for ever and ever and ever. And so that's something that I think is really important to note if people are trying to look at the financial aspect of it. Though I tend not to put a huge, I don't try to put a price tag on my health. Of course, if it was like $50,000, that'd be different. But I think they're like $2,500. So
All
they're
right.
within reach.
And how easy is it to actually use physically? I mean, so say if somebody, I have a close friend who has somebody who suffers sometimes from seizures and may not want to wear. How do you actually do it? What is it, like a face mask, or what? How easy is it, and how long do you have to use it for?
So this is actually really great. The guy who designed it made it super easy. Some of the equipment out there is more complicated, and I'm not a fan of that stuff. It's one button. So you either tap the button or you hold down the button to go through the different modes that it has. Everything's pre-measured to make it easy for you too, because all the machines, nobody in the industry does this. It's the only company that actually lab tests every single machine. It's insane, actually. It's so expensive. That's why nobody would do it. But these guys are so passionate about what they do. They lab test it. You actually get a certificate. It shows the lab that it was tested in, the amount of hydrogen, all the proper information, how much water to put in the machine, which the maximum is 1.5 liters, how long it needs to run to fully saturate, the hydrogen within the water. So everything is very easy to use. I've made videos showing how to use it, but the truth is that they made it so easy. But there's two things. You were asking about the mask. One, you just drink the water. So you pour
Okay.
the water, you just drink the water.
The
I
reason I
created
ask that
protocols.
is I've mentioned
Yes.
hydrogen gas to people, and they're like, "Oh no, I can't use that because I'd have to breathe it in." And I'm thinking, I don't. I'm pretty sure that you don't, because the whole thing is you add it to water. So I just wanted to clarify that there. So thanks for that part.
Well, actually, there's two ways that the machine allows you to use it, and one of them you do breathe it in.
Yes, yeah.
So you do the inhalation, and I've created protocols, and a lot of my protocols have been copied at this point. And even if you can believe this, they've even scientifically tested some of my protocols, and they proved that I was right, that they work best. I like drinking the hydrogen water on an empty stomach. I believe that that's more bioavailable because the water will not sit in your stomach very long, and it'll go into your GI carrying all this rich hydrogen, because hydrogen has actually been proven and shown to be absolutely incredible for the gut. And so many people are having gut issues. The things that it's doing in the gut are just mind blowing, but a lot of people also have a lot of inflammation. The way it appears to feed the good gut bacteria, calm down that inflammation. It's just, to me, again, it's another miracle. But I do the empty, on an empty stomach, I drink the water, and then I give myself a little time, 20 minutes or so, and then I eat my meal. So I do this before meals on an empty stomach. So I do it before breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And that allows me to also just drink water throughout the day and stay well hydrated. Of course, the cleanest water, which is what I'm a fan of. And so that's how simple it is. The inhalation aspect. So the water and the inhalation seem to have many similar benefits, but then there's also benefits that they only have individually. And when you merge them together, which is one of the protocols I created, all of a sudden they're doing things that neither one did on their own. And so the way that I do that is I found that if you drink the hydrogen water first and then you inhale after, it works best. And a lot of times I'll do inhalation while I'm eating. So I'll sit down and have a meal. I'll just put on my cannula and I'm inhaling the hydrogen while I eat, because nobody talks about this a lot, but the science really shows that when you're eating, there's a lot of, dare I say, kind of negative things that happen in the body. I mean, even the aging process, is affected by not only what we're eating, but just eating in general. Because our body's having to figure all this stuff out in regards to dealing with this food. This is why I think fasting is so amazing, because when you give the body a rest and you're fasting, you're in a fasting state, the organs finally get to relax a little bit and they don't have to be working all the time. It's like this internal factory within you that's always dealing with all this stuff. And if you do, and I discovered this too, another one of my protocols, the hydrogen fast. I actually think that my hydrogen fast protocols and it like changed the world. It is so incredible. I mean, fasting is already incredible, and now you take it to a whole other level. I could go into the science of how I discovered it, because I'm the one who kind of invented that one actually. But we probably don't have time this time.
Oh
But
no, feel
we could get
free,
into it if you want.
because I think it's really important. I don't want to sort of ever suppress information. And I think if it's your protocol, it's much better if you claim it over and over, because there are going to be people that will take it and say they thought of it and then change it. And then,
Yes,
so yeah.
that has actually happened already a lot. A lot of my stuff has been stolen. But basically, what happens is if you look at actual data where when people fast, the gut bacteria, the gut bacteria activity actually goes down dramatically because you're not eating anything. And when you're not eating anything, you're not feeding the gut bacteria. So they're not as active and the numbers go down again significantly. My protocol that I created, the reason, and you got to have the water. And then secondary is the gas inhalation when you're fasting. And my theory is actually that it keeps the bacteria numbers up, the good bacteria, because hydrogen actually appears to really feed the good bacteria and keep these numbers up. So that way your body still has all this wonderful activity without the food having to be going into the body. So all the organs are getting rest, but you still have quote unquote the workers, of the body. Because I mean, almost 80% of our immune system's in the gut. We know how important it is. We've recently learned through science about the connection between the gut and our production of serotonin in our brain. I actually believe, and it's helped me a ton, people who deal with depression, anxiety, different brain, different disorders. I actually think that this is going to make a huge difference in that, even with addiction of all things, which is really wild. Again, I could probably go into the data of that, but it just goes on and on. It's very long, but in the end, it's just this one miraculous thing, kind of like water. It's hydrogen gas, and it just does so much, just like water does a ton. I mean, if we were to talk about water,
Oh
my
yeah.
goodness, we'd be talking all day.
But also the gut microbiome makes hydrogen anyway itself. And I think nowadays,
Yes.
all of the things you've described in the water, the glyphosate, etc., that affects how the gut microbiome can make hydrogen. So what we're talking about is replacing something that should be there naturally. And also, like you said earlier, the sun's just a giant ball of hydrogen. So again, the clue is in Mother Nature. It's just one of these things, because I'm really interested in what you've got to say, but then it's also I kind of get disturbed that the information gets suppressed, but there, and also someone like yourself's very evangelical about it, and it needs to be shared. And I think it's just sad that people have been misinformed, and when something like this comes along, they're just, oh, here we go again. So as we say, we've kind of gone on for a long time. Is there anything else you want to say that's really important? Also say where people can find you, and links and things like that, and so you can close up with something that you think's important.
Yeah. So if people want to find information or find me, you go to YouTube, type in Uprising 144K. You will find my channel and subscribe. And if you really want to help this movement, help the information get out, subscribing is free, and share it. Share it with people. A lot of people don't know about this as an option. And I really believe it can change a lot of people's lives. I am also on Twitter and Instagram and Rumble. I'm not a big computer guy, so I don't know how to do a lot of the computer stuff. And I don't post a lot there. Most of the greatest data is on YouTube, basically, where I do the videos and I chat about it. So anybody who's interested, I just encourage them to go check that out. And I sincerely hope that it helps people out there, as I think that that's the most important thing. And the more that people learn about it, eventually the word will get out. And then there's even more things that I want to do and share with hydrogen. But at this time, I'm just sticking to the health aspect. I just want people to be healthy, mentally clear, and then we can move on, to other things. And I'll even share this. This is also interesting. I saw a study where hydrogen actually helps also bring down the parasitic count within the body. So parasites. So this is another one. I don't think it actually kills the parasites, though. I think that it creates an environment that the parasites don't like. And so they leave. And so I think this is hugely important to health too. I think there's been a lot of talk about parasites. I'm really big on keeping my body clean from such things. And the Japanese have also done amazing work. They literally have a whole museum dedicated to the research of parasites. And so that's another thing that's magical about the water. I know there's so many things, but I had to throw that one in there. I just think it's so important.
Oh no, that's because I try and keep my body as unpopular for any viruses or parasites or whatever, so they don't want to inhabit me. But also I think there are some really harsh parasite. If you try and get the parasites out, they'll put up a battle. It's like trying to get squatters out. Whereas
Yes.
if you make yourself unattractive, they just go anywhere as well. So I think that's a
That's
really
right.
important aspect, because people can really hurt themselves and they can get very obsessed with parasites, and it is a sort of quite frightening concept. And I think also, to close up, I think it's really important that you've explained that all of this is backed by science, so skeptics can look it up. You yourself had very bad health issues, and here you are now. And also you've got a house full of things that didn't work, a bit like me, a big trail of sort of works in progresses. You've been sort of honest about it and explained everything quite simply. So I think it's been a real pleasure to speak to you at short notice. So thank you for doing it so close to Christmas as well. And I hope people found this interesting and they want to run with it like I do. And I'm also glad it's affordable for people too.
Yeah, me too. I love what they did. Again, it's small, it's easy to use, it's accessible, it's affordable. And once you get it, it's not like you have to replace it every year. I mean, we're talking years and years and years. I mean, so many years of usage. Even their newest machine, they actually updated it. And God, I love this company because they don't just sit on their laurels. A lot of companies will, I've seen this in the hydrogen world, they make a product and they just keep selling the same thing. This company has consistently improved it. And their latest iteration is so light years beyond anybody. Nobody's even close to making this type of hydrogen or even having this type of technology. And even the company recently told me that the new model is so well built, even they don't know how long it will last. They literally think it might just last indefinitely. That's how well built it is. And so that's really important in the world of hydrogen, because most hydrogen machines, like I said, they break all the time. It's pretty frustrating.
Oh no, it's really infuriating. I think I was gonna say the machine's a bit like a parrot. It's probably gonna outlive its owner. But I think that's a good thing nowadays, because my mum and dad, and I think other people will say, oh, things are not made like they used to, and everything's disposable culture, because the company
Yes.
wants to sell 3 machines rather than one. Whereas if you can pay once and have a proper machine to last forever, I think that's also an important point for people understanding that the company does have people's best interests at heart, which, like you said earlier in the podcast, isn't common these days. It's wanting to help people, not just make a large amount of money.
And that's why I love the Japanese. Japanese are really into quality. They just love quality. I mean, China will make products that you get them, by the time you use them once, they break, or, they're not trying to do quality. The Japanese will do, like that's why Toyota developed this whole reputation, right? The quality of their cars, and they last so long. And I love that about their culture. The samurai swords, I mean, they still exist to this day. The quality, the science of the metals, even again for the samurai sword. I just love that. I love when people do something from the heart. They want to do it the right way. Yeah, they'll make less profit or whatever, but you do it the right way, and you feel good in your heart and in your soul, about what you're doing in your life. And that's just, in my opinion, the way to live.
Oh yeah, exactly. Because I like to have a clear conscience, but also I just want to thank you for coming on and talking. And it's been really great to speak to you. And I hope we can speak again, because I'm sure you've got lots more gems to share, and more depth for this. Because again, sometimes there are people who want more depth for science, but I think this was a brilliant introduction to hydrogen, and because people can get confused with like a proton, a H plus, and acidity. And now, just to make the distinction about, we talked about it earlier, how hydrogen itself is healing, and this is the way to do it. And I hope,
Yeah, absolutely.
yes, exactly, because that's the thing. It's fine to say, okay, hydrogen's healing, but then, as you elucidated to, there are like 50 products and 50 rabbit holes you can go down. Actually, just before we close up, I just wanted to ask
Yeah.
one thing. I don't want to name any companies, but you
Yeah.
can get a device fitted in your house that adds hydrogen to your water as well as minerals. What's wrong with that machine?
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of those because, okay, a lot of the minerals, first you want to find out where they're really coming from. I'm 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 pretty specific on the minerals that I use. They're from a specific company. They have a doctor that works with them, and then the name of the company is called Concentrates. If you've ever heard of Concentrates minerals, those are the ones that I personally use. Very high purity. When you're trying to provide hydrogen for like an entire house, I hate to say it, it's really not realistic because think about this. The machine that we're talking about makes the Lourdes HydroFix Premium makes 1.5 liters of fully saturated water, right? For 1.5 liters, it takes half an hour to fully saturate it. So how are you going to turn on a faucet and have water that just comes out? And do you really think it's going to be fully saturated, making the water, correctly? A little, in my opinion, it not only is it highly unlikely, it's the same thing for water filters. This has been the observation I made for water filters and hydrogen devices. Anything that does it instantaneously doesn't seem to really be the best. So if you pull your faucet or something and you get water through your filter and it's instantaneous, you're like, oh, look, I got clean water right away. I don't think that's, and I know that the water is not even of the highest purity. My carbon distiller, it doesn't make water immediately. It literally takes between 3 to 6 hours to make 1 gallon of the cleanest water known to man, but it takes 3 to 6 hours. So I run it and then I have bottles, I bottle it up, unless you get one of their big systems that has a holding tank that's always making it and has it in a holding tank wherever you want it. And it's the same thing with the hydrogen. It takes time to really fully saturate. So some equipment in your house, a lot of times, I don't know if they're using, because there's different equipment out there. One, you're either directly electrolyzing the water. And the reason that that's actually a concern is because the way that electricity interacts with these contaminants in our water makes them worse. Like, for example, if you run electricity through water that has chlorine, you're going to produce chlorine gas. I mean, this is not a good idea. And so this is why you'll see certain equipment, and I'm also not a fan of these, they say distilled water only. Like you can't put any water in our machines except for distilled water. That lets you know that if you have anything in the water, electrical current's going to run through it, and you're potentially and most likely going to produce some type of contaminant. Whereas a device that I'm using, for example, this the Lourdes HydroFix, if you were to just put like spring water, or if you were to even put tap water, if that's something you want to do, it will not enhance the impurities because you're not electrolyzing the water that you're actually drinking. I don't know if this makes sense, but
Oh, no, it makes perfect sense because I was going to say, first of all, I used to be a biochemist, so what you're talking about makes sense to me. But first of all, I was going to say that these machines that add minerals and hydrogen, to me, I would, in my own language, think you can't get the concentration of hydrogen high enough, and it's just too dilute. So they're claiming, oh no, I've used the hydrogen water and I've ticked the box, but it's not concentrated enough. I've just used different language. And then the thing about, we've already been over the minerals and such like. So no, it makes sense to me about what I always like to know. What I do know, have some knowledge, not like you, about all of these, because no matter what, people are always going to find some other alternative and then ask me or you, and it's just like sometimes it's better to sort of bring the information out and not name any companies, but explain scientifically why you're better off investing that money elsewhere to get something that's
yeah.
better, so you can experience the hydrogen properly, not diluted hydrogen water, maybe is a good word to say it.
Absolutely. And I think, look, if you're going to try to do all your water in your house, I would just try to make it clean.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully, and you're not going to be able to clean. Again, you can't distill the water that's going to go through your entire house. It's just not going to be a realistic thing. I mean, I carbon distill my water just for my hydrogen, the water that I drink, smoothies I make, soups, some basic stuff. I still have to shower, with the tap water. I have a little filter, but they don't, just so you know, shower filter, head filters don't work that good. But you do the best you can in that regard. It's just been such a game changer, and I don't have to have 50 supplements. It's so much cheaper. I spent a small fortune on stuff when I was trying to get better, and it turned out the simplest option was the best one.
Oh yeah, definitely. And it's always nice to share experiences, but also I'm very much, people can be skeptical, and I'm very much, don't just try it and then come back later and then rather than just criticizing something because it doesn't fit your personal paradigm at the time, because you're probably like me, that is, you know, in 4 years time you'll probably explain it in a different way and have extra that, you know, everything's a work in progress, and that no matter what, there is always, I always think to myself, I don't know what I don't know. So it's been really interesting to meet you and for you to share your discoveries. I don't want to say, because you've said, oh, in my opinion, but it's a lot of it is based on scientific studies, and also N equals 1 that's been very expensive with water and hydrogen and stuff. So it's been a really interesting conversation, and I hope people enjoy it as much as I did.
Yeah, I hope so too. And I will throw this in there too. I actually really wanted to honor the guy who made that device, because if it wasn't for that device, there's no equipment out there that I'd want to use, to be quite honest with you. And so I really, really appreciate him. And my understanding is he says any funding that's coming to the company from this, they're actually utilizing it to improve hydrogen technology in ways that I haven't seen anybody do. So I thought that was really nice that he's continuing to reinvest and make, you know, hydrogen equipment better. That's why their machine has improved so much. And I just love that. I like when people are always trying to improve whatever it is that they do, whether it's themselves or the way that they grow food or the way they filter water, whatever it is. And so I love that. And I really appreciate you too. And it was great fun talking to you.
Thank you very much for watching. So as you heard in the video, I did this interview with Greg at Christmas time last year. So it took me until now to decide whether I wanted a hydrogen machine or not. So after trying one, I did decide to bite the bullet and buy a Lourdes HydroFix. I also want to thank my sponsors, Lightwater Scientific, for helping me move this channel forward, get guests on and make content. All of the things we've talked about are in the description. So if you check that out, remember to use code Dr. Sara for deuterium depleted water or $100 off the Lourdes HydroFix. The next video up on the channel, I'm going to do a dive with Morley Robbins, who's an expert on minerals, especially iron and copper. And we're doing a 4-part series because we want to make it really simple for people who've never heard of iron overload before or don't know anything about mitochondria. And then we're going to, in later episodes, go deep into the weeds. So thank you once again for watching.